Hello, all. Happy Thanksgiving, and I find myself with an opportunity to react in real time to the Detroit Lions' loss to the Houston Texans today on Thanksgiving Day. Happy Thanksgiving wherever you are. And I just wanted to discuss this because, once again, the Lions find themselves in last place in the NFC North. Being a fan of a NFC North team and the Minnesota Vikings being a in division rival of the Detroit Lions, I felt like it was worth our time to sort of discuss this because we've had talks about head coaches being fired this season, and I've made it clear on who I think is on the hot seat. And I just kind of want to address the situation that is Matt Patricia as the head coach of the Detroit Lions because after this another poor performance, especially in prime time. They've lost 2 games in a span of 4 days. They're now 4-7, sole possession of last place in the NFC North for now, depending on what happens with the Vikings game. I think we own the tiebreaker on them anyway, so at least at this point, because we have a win over them. So I don't believe that even if we lose to the Panthers, we would take that spot back. But at the same time, it's been 3 years, and this team doesn't look any more competitive than it did in the final year of Jim Caldwell when he went 9-7, and it looked like things were getting better. So I revisit this because it's also one thing that happened in 2018 was that SB Nation called Matt Patricia the safest hire of the 2018 offseason, and so far that has yielded less than ideal results. Just taking a look at Matt Patricia's 3 years here, thus far he's 13-28-1. 2018 he went 6-10. 2019 3-12-1, a huge step back, and in 2020 so far he's 4-7. If the trend holds, he will have finished last place in the NFC North all 3 of his seasons in Detroit. And the thing that strikes me is how he still has a job as being an amazement is the fact that he was a defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots that won a number of Super Bowls. And his defenses, since he's gotten here, have been terrible. In his first year, he was negative 60-point differential. The second year, he was negative 82-point differential. And so far this season, he's a negative 36-point differential. They got shut out on Sunday. So that didn't help at all. And it just hasn't really, it's just been less than mediocre, to be honest with you. I feel like Matt Stafford has been wasted on this team for a number of years, not just with Matt Patricia, but mostly with Matt Patricia. It's felt like Jim Caldwell had something going, and then they totally erased it when they hired this guy because he came from the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick coaching tree, which has not always been successful. And everybody figured that he would be able to turn the ship around in a very competitive division at the time. And so far, it just hasn't worked out. I mean, this season alone, the defense has been bad. They've given up 40 points 3 times. They've had 7 100-yard rushers. They've had 2 games where they've given up 200 yards rushing. And their only wins are against the Cardinals, Jaguars, Falcons, and Washington football team. 3 of those 4 teams are going nowhere near the playoffs, and 2 of them are likely going to be picking in the top 5, the Washington football team and the Jaguars, depending on how things go in the NFC East. I can't really crap on them too much for losing to an NFC East team because we've done the same. And they've lost to a lot of really good teams, but they've also lost to a lot of teams that are in transition. Their losses are the Bears, Packers, Saints, Colts, Vikings, Panthers, and Texans. So, I mean, the Texans are a much better team than they were at the beginning of the season. The Panthers are kind of an enigma. The Vikings are a huge enigma. And then everybody else is pretty much a playoff team except for the Bears, who were just happened to get lucky in that first week with a DeAndre Swift drop touchdown pass. The remaining schedule this year, Bears, Packers, Titans, Bucks, and Vikings. That doesn't sound like wins to me. You probably win the Bears game for sure. Everything else is pretty competitive. And that's not to say that somehow Mitch Trubisky comes back next week and just goes off for some reason, because I don't know if we'll even see Nick Foles by then. So I think Detroit fans, I'm not trying to rip on you. I'm really actually just trying to understand how you feel about the situation, because to me, ever since he got hired by Detroit, Matt Patricia has been my least favorite head coach in the division. And it's not just because he's a division rival. It's just because I honest to God, don't like the guy's approach or philosophy. And we've all read the story. The elephant in the room is the published story that came out a few days ago about the locker room dynamic / atmosphere that he brought initially to Detroit, where he was, I don't want to say intentionally cruel to people, but just the way that his mannerisms are is definitely what you would call locker room talk. And a lot of players took that as disrespectful, and I could understand why. It's not every day that you want to walk into work and be called the swear word or something. I'm not saying that it was, bad, but, walking into work and being like, hey, what's up, bitch? That doesn't fly with everyone. And in a football environment, which I would guess most maybe more so often than not does, but if you're trying to bring, the Patriot way to a team that has not had any sort of consistency in terms of winning and success, it's going to take a little bit of establishing credibility with the roster in order to achieve the Bill Belichick method, right? So if I could say that a little bit better, I understand that what they did in New England was what brought them success, but that doesn't always work with another franchise. And one franchise that you can actually point to would be the Kansas City Chiefs a number of years ago when they had Todd Haley as the head coach. They brought in Matt Castle, and they brought in a former New England Patriot executive to sort of be a director of player personnel, if you will. I might be getting the titles wrong, but it was a long time ago. And I think they had one successful season where they won the division, but other than that, it was just sheer mediocrity. And that's just, sort of how it's been with the Bill Belichick coaching tree, other than Mike Vrabel, and for a while there, Bill O'Brien. Charlie Weiss was run out, was not popular at Notre Dame after a while. And Romeo Crennel has just bounced around from job to job. And I'm not sure why anybody would want to hire Josh McDaniels after his tenure in Denver and the fact that he ghosted the Colts a few years ago. So Matt Patricia, in my mind, probably should have been fired a while ago. But I understand why franchises don't want to do it in the middle of the season, because you really look at what you have on the coaching staff and you're like, who are we going to elevate? Well, I mean, I would elevate Darrell Bevell at this point, because at least the offense can be productive, if they can figure out what to do with the stable of running backs that they have. And I know DeAndre Swift is on the mend, but the fact that you're, marching out Adrian Peterson and you can't figure out what to do with Kerryon Johnson just tells me that you haven't really taken into any consideration the position. You're just throwing darts at the wall and hoping for the best. So yeah, I'm not really too excited about Matt Patricia still being around. I guess I should be, because his presence makes me feel more confident that we can beat the Lions at the end of the season in our final game. Not that I think that game's going to be relevant at all. I think by the time that game rolls around, we'll both just be happy. Both fan bases will just be happy that the season's over. We can look forward to the off season to improve our teams. But if that game did mean something, I would feel pretty confident that we would be able to win it, because Matt Patricia does not strike me as a good head coach. And if history repeats itself, which this is a fun fact I learned the other day, that no Detroit Lions NFL head coach has gotten a second head coaching job after leaving Detroit. So this could be his one and done. And maybe he goes back to being a defensive coordinator somewhere else, which is entirely possible. He had some good defenses in New England, but maybe a lot of that is attributed to Bill Belichick. So either way, that is sort of my discussion today on the Detroit Lions from a Minnesota Vikings fan's perspective. The NFC North is shaping up to be an interesting one, because who's going to finish second is the real story. And I'll leave you with a funny story that I read on the Minnesota subreddit today, was that there is one scenario that would allow us to be the number one seed in the playoffs at 10-6, but it required Detroit winning the rest of the way, and that has unfortunately gone up in smoke today. So that's going to do it for this video. We're going to have some other talking points that I want to discuss coming up, so look out for future videos in the coming days. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.